Welcome back, everyone. We're following urgent and breaking developments this morning out of the Middle East, where the United States and Israel have launched what they are calling preemptive strikes against Iran. This Saturday marked a significant escalation as both nations targeted multiple sites across Iran. Moments after President Donald Trump announced that the U.S. had initiated a mission aimed at dismantling the Iranian regime, clouds of smoke were seen rising over Tehran. In an early Saturday statement, President Trump declared that the U.S. military had embarked on major combat operations inside Iran, with Israel joining in what has been designated Operation Epic Theory. The president emphasized that this is not a brief engagement like the limited strikes seen last summer during Operation Midnight Hammer. Instead, he described these combined efforts as a substantial, ongoing military operation intended to neutralize the threat posed by what he called a wicked radical dictatorship, endangering America's national security interests. Looking back to June of last year, similar Israeli and American strikes had targeted Iran's air defenses, military leadership, and nuclear infrastructure, significantly crippling Iran's capabilities. Meanwhile, in January, Iran brutally suppressed widespread protests that erupted over residents' dissent against the ruling clerics. Human rights groups have since confirmed that over 7,000 people were killed during this violent crackdown. This morning, as we take a live look at Jerusalem, an Israeli official has reported that both Iran's Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei and President Ibrahim Raisi were primary targets in these strikes. Earlier today, President Trump addressed the Iranian people in a video message, delivering a pointed warning alongside a mission. Tonight, I say the hour of your freedom is at hand. Stay sheltered. Do not leave your homes. It is very dangerous outside. Bombs will be dropping everywhere. When we are finished, take over your government. This dramatic military action follows the collapse of nuclear deal talks between the U.S. and Iran this past Thursday. Since then, Iran has retaliated with a series of drone and missile attacks on Israeli territory and multiple U.S. military bases scattered across the Middle East. The sirens you hear blaring now are part of Iran's ongoing retaliation, which they had vowed to unleash if they were attacked. These strikes have been occurring across Kuwait, Bahrain, Qatar, the United Arab Emirates, and Israel. This morning alone, Iran launched additional assaults targeting Qatar, Kuwait, Saudi Arabia, Bahrain, and even the UAE, where I am reporting. In recent hours, explosions and thick plumes of smoke have filled skies as Emirati forces intercepted incoming Iranian missiles. Just moments ago, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu addressed the nation on television, noting that evidence is mounting that Iran's supreme leader may have been killed in the U.S.-Israel joint operation targeting multiple cities in Iran, including its capital, Tehran. Iranian officials have announced that the Ayatollah will address the nation shortly, underscoring the gravity of this unprecedented moment in Middle Eastern geopolitics. This evening, we are still waiting for any official addresses or messages. No proof of life has been released yet. Earlier today, Israel, together with the United States, took decisive action to halt an existential threat not only to Israel, but also to our allies and global stability. This is a pivotal moment in history that demands clear moral resolve, and President Trump has stepped up to meet that challenge. This morning, in a coordinated effort, the United States and Israel launched an unprovoked, carefully planned military offensive against the Islamic Republic of Iran, marking the second such attack within recent months. President Donald Trump has officially declared war on Iran. It is imperative that Congress reconvene on Monday to deliberate and vote on Thomas Massey's War Powers Resolution aimed at stopping this conflict. While President Trump asserts that his objective is to overthrow the Iranian regime, many American citizens are weary of regime change wars that drain billions of dollars and put our troops at risk. As a member of the Gang of Eight, I was informed before the strike. Yet, I remain uncertain about our nation's strategic goals in this looming war. There was no immediate threat to the United States at this time, which leads me to believe that the president has chosen to wage a war of choice, endangering our servicemen and women unnecessarily. Over the past 36 hours, the United States and its allied forces have initiated Operation Epic Fury, one of the largest, most intricate, and most overwhelming military campaigns ever conducted worldwide. Notably, Iran's former supreme leader, Ayatollah Khamenei, has been killed. Combat operations continue robustly and will persist until all predefined objectives are satisfied. We pray for the speedy recovery of the wounded and offer our heartfelt love and eternal gratitude to the families of those who have fallen in battle. Regrettably, more casualties are anticipated as the conflict unfolds. Following an early morning strike on Saturday, the Trump administration officially declared war on Iran. Since then, relentless strikes from both us and Israeli forces have targeted the regime, eliminating the Ayatollah and several other senior officials. President Trump has called upon the Iranian people to reclaim their nation. However, there remains uncertainty about who currently holds power in Iran. Reports suggest ambiguity regarding the command structure, with a succession mechanism active within the country. Top military and religious leaders appear to be filling leadership gaps. There have been indications that the Ayatollah has not been managing daily regime operations since the initial U.S. attacks began last summer. Many questions remain about whether an organized opposition can emerge to assume control and possibly transition Iran into a democracy, an outcome desired by numerous U.S. officials. Meanwhile, Iran is retaliating. Since the onset of US military operations, Iran has targeted multiple regional allies. In summary, 2 days ago, acting under direct orders from President Donald J. Trump, the Department of War launched Operation Epic Fury, the deadliest and most complex military initiative in recent history. This marks one of the most extensive aerial operations in history. For an agonizing span of 47 years, the expansionist and Islamist regime in Iran has waged a brutal, one-sided war against America. They haven't always declared this war openly, yet their hostile actions against the United States have been relentless. Their aggression came at the terrible cost of American lives, through car bombs in Beirut, rocket attacks targeting our naval vessels, assassinations at US embassies, and roadside bombs that terrorized troops in Iraq and Afghanistan. These attacks were consistently funded and orchestrated by Iranian forces, such as the Quds Force and the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, IRGC, the very groups responsible for killing American soldiers. This conflict was never about a so-called regime change war, although the regime itself did change significantly, and the world is undeniably safer for it. President Trump has made it clear he will not rule out deploying US ground troops in Iran if the situation required. In an interview with the New York Post, the president expressed his willingness to put American boots on the ground in Iran should the need arise. Similarly, when speaking to CNN's Jake Tapper, Trump forecasted that Iran will soon face a significant military response. U.S. military forces are preparing to send additional troops into the Middle East, signaling a broadening of the conflict. Iranian-backed militias throughout the region have escalated attacks not just on American forces, but also on our allies, intensifying the unrest and hostilities. Congressional leaders are gearing up for a contentious showdown this week over President Trump's authority to wage war. This comes on the heels of recent US and Israeli strikes against Iran that killed the country's supreme leader, plunging the region into even greater turmoil. However, even if Congress were to debate and vote on war powers legislation related to this conflict, it is widely understood that any such bill would not become law. President Trump is expected to veto any attempt to limit his authority, and there isn't the necessary supermajority in Congress to override such a veto. Meanwhile, more American troops and jets are being deployed to the region, reinforcing the military's presence. On Capitol Hill, administration officials have engaged with members of Congress, briefing them on the situation. Democratic lawmakers have challenged the president's rationale for initiating this war, emphasizing that this is not a defensive or necessary conflict, but rather a war of choice. On the other hand, the majority of Republicans stand by the president's decision, citing grave concerns over Iran's nuclear ambitions. The Iranian regime continues to deliberately target civilians, proving its nature as a terrorist regime, a sponsor and participant in global terrorism. Their long-term strategy has been to build a formidable conventional weapons arsenal, including missiles and drones, intended as a shield behind which they would hide their nuclear program. Once they amass enough conventional firepower capable of inflicting catastrophic damage, they hope to deter any intervention against their nuclear endeavors. President Trump made a strategically wise decision. Intelligence indicated an imminent Israeli military action that would likely provoke retaliatory attacks against American forces. By striking preemptively, the United States aimed to thwart larger casualties we would have suffered if we had waited. The administration knew that failing to act decisively would have led to heavier losses, and subsequently, a barrage of criticism questioning why the U.S. had foreknowledge but failed to respond. The course of action taken was, therefore, necessary to protect American lives and maintain security in an increasingly volatile region. Since the conflict erupted, oil prices have surged significantly, climbing about 6% so far. As of Monday morning, around 11:00 a.m., crude oil is trading near $71.72 per barrel. The pivotal question looming now is the status of the Strait of Hormuz, the crucial maritime corridor that allows shipments to exit Iran. Should Iran carry out its threat to completely blockade this passage, we could witness an explosive spike in oil prices, spiraling out of control. The war is expanding rapidly across the Middle East, following recent U.S. and Israeli airstrikes targeting Iran. In retaliation, Iran struck back at Israel, attacked a British military base in Cyprus, and caused the shutdown of multiple airports throughout the region. Simultaneously, pro-Iranian regime protesters have clashed with security forces at U.S. embassies across the Middle East. Back on Capitol Hill, responses to the U.S. military actions are deeply divided, largely along partisan lines. Some view the intervention as a noble effort to combat terrorism. Others dismiss the claim that this attack aims to halt Iran's nuclear ambitions as sheer nonsense. The conflict represents a shift to an entirely new strategy in the Middle East, different from the decades-long strife we've seen before. The Trump administration has vowed that this will be a brief campaign in Iran, promising the Department of Defense has well-defined objectives for this operation. As lawmakers reconvene in Washington, security measures are heightened across Capitol Hill and the wider D.C. area. In addition, 3 U.S. embassies in the Middle East have been temporarily shut down, and the State Department has urgently ordered all U.S. citizens in the region to evacuate immediately, given the rapid escalation of hostilities under President Trump's war with Iran. Thousands of Americans are now stranded amidst the chaos. Why is there an evacuation plan unfolding so suddenly? Will the U.S. government deploy planes to evacuate citizens? The rapid developments caught many off guard. Some, including myself and others like Marco, had anticipated an escalation and possible attacks. The reality is that Iran was preparing strikes on Israel and other targets, prompting swift action. Currently, options for Americans to leave the Middle East are extremely limited. Much of the airspace is closed off, several key airports have shut down, and airlines have pulled out their flights altogether, which leaves thousands stranded and scrambling. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth addressed the situation in a Pentagon press briefing this morning. He announced reinforcements of warplanes arriving in the Middle East and cautioned that the conflict will intensify rather than de-escalate. This will include a significant bombing campaign against Iran. Hegseth delivered a blunt message about the Iranian regime, declaring it is toast. He emphasized that only the United States, in partnership with the Israeli Defense Forces and incredibly capable military, can bring about decisive destruction to their radical Islamist Iranian adversary. They are toast, he asserted, and assured that Iran will soon come to realize the full extent of their defeat. It has only been 4 days since Operation Epic Fury began, but already it has unleashed more than twice the air power seen during the shock and awe campaign in Iraq. This operation aims to hunt, dismantle, demoralize, destroy, and ultimately defeat Iran's capabilities, setting the stage for what could become a long and intense conflict. As the situation escalates, the conflict has rapidly spread across the Middle East, intensifying tensions day by day. Just earlier today, NATO air defenses successfully intercepted and shot down an Iranian ballistic missile that was en route to Turkish airspace, preventing what could have been a major incident. During a recent briefing, Hegseth expressed sharp criticism toward the news media for their emphasis on the casualties among American service members. He accused the press of focusing excessively on the 6 American soldiers who have lost their lives in the war, suggesting that this coverage is an attempt to undermine the president's image. This is what the fake news overlooks, he said. We've established control over Iran's airspace and waterways without deploying boots on the ground. We essentially hold their fate in our hands. Yet when just a few drones penetrate or when tragic losses occur, that dominates the headlines. I understand the media aims to portray the president in a negative light, but for once, I urge them to report the actual facts. Regarding future operations, he acknowledged that ground troops are not presently part of the plan. However, he added firmly, I will never remove military options from the table on behalf of the President of the United States. Why? There have been numerous warnings and advisories issued by the State Department, which he wished were more widely reported. For example, on January 14th, the U.S. mission in Saudi Arabia advised all personnel and American citizens to exercise increased caution and limit non-essential travel, especially to military installations. Later, on February 11th, the U.S. Department of State's Consular Affairs released a comprehensive list of countries within the region classified under Level 4 Do Not Travel advisories. In the face of loss and ongoing conflict, Hegseth extended heartfelt prayers and condolences to the families of the 6 U.S. military service members who sacrificed their lives during Operation Epic Fury. He honored these fallen heroes as the finest among the nation, emphasizing that their legacy and sacrifice will never be forgotten. As President Trump articulated, we grieve for these American patriots and their families as we continue the righteous mission for which they gave their lives. Demonstrating his respect and solidarity, President Trump intends to attend the dignified transfer of these heroes, standing with their families in shared grief. From insights provided by the chairman of the Joint Chiefs, we learned some staggering figures that reveal the intensity of the conflict. On the first day, Iran launched 219 missiles, which diminished to 31 by the 4th day. Drone attacks followed a similar pattern, with nearly 800 on the first day reduced to around 200 on day 4. One of the remarkable military feats during this conflict has been the successful deployment of the first torpedo to take out a submarine since World War II, underscoring the advanced nature of modern warfare on display. Amidst these developments, A pressing question looms. What is the prospect of deploying boots on the ground? As we watch the military might unfold from the air and sea, viewers observed a live broadcast where the camera panned towards Beirut. It appeared that missile launches had taken place. Canopies of smoke and flashes lit the night sky around 1:40 a.m. Beirut time. This reminder that the conflict's intensity is not just limited to one area highlights the volatile and unpredictable nature of the current situation in the region. Smoke is rising right there, appearing in the center of your screen. If you were just watching us earlier, you would have spotted it in the top right portion. I want to hold this image a moment while we listen in. Now, as I pause to gather my thoughts, I catch some background noise creeping in. Victoria, this really underscores Israel's ongoing campaign to target Hezbollah. Meanwhile, U.S. operations in Iran are intensifying, and the debate over presidential authority in Congress is heating up. The Senate is scheduled to vote at 4 p.m. today on Virginia, Senator Tim Kaine's resolution, which aims to further restrict military action in Iran. The timing is critical, especially as 6 American service members have recently died in the fighting. Kaine's resolution has the backing of Republican Senator Rand Paul of Kentucky, but it's not expected to secure much Republican support. Indiana Senator Todd Young, a pivotal vote, has declared he will oppose the resolution, warning that limiting the president's military options now will only increase danger. On this matter, the tally stands: 47 yeas, 53 nays. Consequently, the motion to discharge the resolution did not pass. There were many ominous signs. Iranian leaders have been calling for President Trump's blood following recent attacks. The Associated Press reports an Iranian cleric declared on state television that the country is seeking to shed Trump's blood. Moreover, the Iranian foreign minister issued a stark warning that the U.S. will bitterly regret sinking an Iranian warship. Just this past Wednesday, a U.S. Navy submarine sank an Iranian warship in international waters, a significant event. This marked the first underwater torpedo attack on an adversary since World War II. To provide insight, we now welcome General David Petraeus, former Central Command commander and CIA director. General, it's an honor to have you with us this evening. As the president mentioned, it would be ideal if the Kurds moved forward. The Kurds are formidable fighters. We know them very well from collaborations in Iraq and in northeastern Syria, where they helped us combat ISIS. But they represent only about 10% of the population. Thus, their numbers are limited. They face off against a regime force that, while battered, remains dispersed and focused on survival. Currently, we have access to unprecedented air power. Not only stealth fighters like the F-35 and bombers like the B-2, but also heavy hitters like the B-52s, and B-1s capable of delivering massive payloads. We're not too concerned about Iran's air and ballistic missile defenses, provided operations stay above heavy machine gun range. This creates a real opportunity to intensify strikes substantially. I'd argue we have air supremacy now, not merely air superiority. However, many rightly approach such assessments with caution. The bottleneck of Americans trying to leave the Middle East is beginning to ease, thanks to new initiatives like charter flights organized by the State Department. However, the longer I spent there, the more uneasy I felt. Across the region, American families, students, and tourists find themselves trapped, scrambling desperately to get out. Hundreds of thousands remain stranded due to widespread flight cancellations and airspace closures, leaving few options for escape. Meanwhile, The Trump administration faces renewed criticism from Democratic lawmakers who argue that there was a lack of a clear evacuation plan prior to the outbreak of conflict. Critics say the government took far too long to provide assistance. One outspoken lawmaker pointed out, if we're going to spend billions on bombs, we should be able to allocate funds to secure the safe return of American citizens from the region. To address the crisis, the State Department has turned to deploying military aircraft and charter planes to safely transport stranded Americans back to the United States. Back home, many are feeling the war's effects in tangible ways, most notably at the gas pump. Once a point of pride for the Trump administration due to low fuel prices, the rising cost of gas is beginning to concern voters nationwide. News Nation's national correspondent Mills Hayes reports from Chicago, noting that these higher prices are part of what some describe as Iran's energy warfare strategy. When asked how long this spike might last, President Trump has said that gas prices will drop quickly once the war concludes. Yet he has emphasized that the ongoing military campaign holds greater importance than gasoline costs. Despite that, Politico is reporting that the White House is urging key officials to develop strategies to reduce gas prices that millions of Americans pay daily. Since the strikes on Iran commenced about a week ago, unleaded gasoline prices nationwide have risen by approximately 34 cents on average. Diesel fuel prices have surged even more, rising about 60 cents, impacting not only everyday consumers, but also farmers and long-haul truck drivers who transport food and consumer goods to stores. This increase threatens a ripple effect that could push up the prices of various products. President Trump has made it clear that there are no time limits on the military campaign following the U.S. and Israel's attacks on Iran. He is demanding Iran's unconditional surrender and continues to publicly praise the U.S. strikes. Why? However, polling data suggests growing skepticism and unhappiness among the American public regarding these developments. To delve deeper, we turn to Niall Stanage, White House columnist for The Hill. When asked about public sentiment toward the strikes, Stanage notes a marked departure from historical patterns. Unlike the usual rally-around-the-flag response during foreign conflicts, he explains current polls show that a significant portion of Americans disapprove of these strikes in various ways. This shift indicates a more critical and divided public perspective amid escalating tensions overseas. Consider the core advantages carefully. In reality, we aren't witnessing any significant effect of uniting or rallying around a cause at this point.